The pandemic brought a renewed focus on parenting. Many of us set out to have children. But before we can nurture, should we not try to heal? Instead of telling our children what to do or what not to do, how can we revise our language to communicate with them effectively? That's the premise of conscious parenting, a concept popularized by renowned author and psychologist Dr. Shefali Zabari. Kavita Srinivasan is a well-known name in the media circles in Dubai and has trained under Dr. Zabari and is now a conscious parenting coach. Let's ask her what the challenges of parenting in modern age are. Kavita, welcome to the KT Life podcast.
This is the KT Life podcast by Khaleej Times.
Welcome to the KT Life podcast, Kavita.
Thank you so much for having me, Anamika.
So, what is conscious parenting all about and why is it important to modern lives?
You know, the premise of conscious parenting is this, that our children are just our mirrors. And we look at our children and we say, oh, my child is not behaving well, or my child is throwing a fit or throwing a tantrum or is not doing what I want him or her to do. But the way your child is behaving is directly a mirror of your inner child and what your emotional state is within. So conscious parenting just states that whatever you want to change or heal or help your child with is actually something you need to change yourself. So the work is all about you, not your child. So it's actually working on your inner child. That is the premise of conscious parenting.
You were a hugely successful editor and journalist. In fact, a big disclaimer, we've worked together. What made you give everything up to become a conscious parenting coach?
Well, Anamika, I had no choice. When I had my son, I literally went from 100 to 0 in the span of a few seconds. I've always loved children. I love children. I always knew I wanted to have a child. It was like the focus of my existence. I want to have a child. I want to have a child. I was the happiest pregnant woman. I was working till 7 p.m. and I went into labor at 3 a.m. And I was happy. So the moment I gave birth to him, it was just crazy how everything fell apart. I couldn't breathe. And it wouldn't get better. I would be scared to be in the same room alone with him. And this feeling would not abate till he was 3 years old and I still was a mess. I lost my voice for 6 months. I was a jittery.
Lost your voice, as in?
I couldn't speak. I lost my voice. And there was no reason why. There was just no reason why. But now I understand why. Because when you don't access your pain, your body speaks. And I was not releasing or speaking my truth. And that manifested in my voice going. Everyone has a physical symptom when they repress their pain. For me, this is it, It was really bad. And I remember, I turned 40 when my son was 3 years old. And I had gone to therapy, but none of the therapy was able to help me really deal with what I was going through. I met Dr. Shefali. I interviewed her for work. And, 40 is a really magical age. You can hear everything, maybe the same thing before you turn 40, but somehow at 40 something cracks open. It's a very powerful time. And I asked her, I said, well, I have postpartum distress and he's 3 years old, so how can I help myself? And she said, well, you can't give what you didn't get. And suddenly the dots aligned. I grew up with a mentally unwell mother. I took care of her all my life. In India, we don't talk about mental ill health, so it was shoved under the carpet. I've taken care of her at night. I've taken care of her in the day. And to this day, I watched her disintegrate and my family fell apart. And I was left in boarding school and it was just a dark time. And I had not really acknowledged the pain of everything I had been through because here I am, successful, with a man that I love, pregnant, having a child, great friends, a good life. So really, you don't really understand what you've survived and the pain of your childhood till you're actually confronted with your child in front of you. Nobody triggers your pain and your internal, how malnourished you are emotionally as much as your child. And my child showed me how incapable I was of nurture because I'd given my nurture away. So literally after that interview, I quit. I'd already like decided to resign, but I resigned. I stopped working in November of 2019. I was uncomfortable. I wanted to start something. I've always been professionally successful. So I was like, what do I do? COVID happened. And I just said, I'm going to do nothing and I'm just going to work on myself. I'm just going to be with myself. And I just fell apart. I allowed myself to break, and I found the right healer. I studied under Dr. Shefali. It happened all very organically. I started helping parents and children because I know what it feels like. In my process of healing, I know how to help others heal, and I wanted to learn more. So healing is not just about talk therapy. It's mind, body, soul. And there's only one university in the world that actually does this well. Dr. Shefali went there. And so I applied and I started working and I started studying there. And I'm about to finish my master's in holistic psychology. So it really was not a choice. I think my entire life has been leading up to this.
Right. Talking a little bit about being with a mentally ill parent.
Yeah.
How did that shape you as an individual, as a child?
Honestly, as a child, I can feel that child's pain now. It was horrible, Anamika. It's horrible. It's horrible to see. I was aware of my mother's fragility since I have conscious memory and maybe even my subconscious memory. So I was never allowed to be fragile. I didn't have a sense of belonging because when I was 6 years old, 6.5 years old, and my sister was 4, we were left in a boarding school in India. Because my father, they were young, they were doing the best that they could, and he couldn't handle it. So I was just abandoned, and there was neglect, and so how do I feel? I think I had no sense of belonging, and I spent my entire adult life forming toxic, enmeshed relationships, and looking for belonging in other people and places because my internal sense of belonging was filled with so much pain. So yeah, I've had toxic friendships. I've had lack of boundaries. I've tried to, find belonging in other people's lives and homes. Every relationship you have in your life is a version of or a reaction to your relationship with your parents. So, and so I spent my life not connected to myself, running away from my pain, as opposed to knowing that it is only when I embraced my pain and embraced who I was that I realized the beauty of the life that I have lived. These lives don't happen by accident. We choose these lives. We live these lives, and your pain is your power. So yeah, I wasn't connecting with my power. I was running away from it, and hence running away from myself.
I want to touch upon this aspect of how parenting is a foundational entry point to life at large.
Yeah.
Many people fear that, the wounds they have inherited from their parents, that they are going to inflict the same wound consciously or unconsciously on their children, and they believe that it is inevitable. Is it possible to escape that?
Of course it is possible. Of course it is possible. And yes, if you're not conscious of it, patterns repeat. Patterns repeat. We are robots. We are programmed in our childhoods a certain way. And we just reenact that programming. It's crazy when you actually look at it. You look at your life. I have so many clients and they come to me and they say, oh, this is the issue with my child. But when we actually dig a little deeper, we see that they're basically reenacting a pattern that was handed down to them from their parents. And it's so often the mother. It's just the mother wound is the source of everything. So yeah, the thing is, we're not even aware. I'll take myself as an example. You're not even aware of the ways in which you need to heal.
Yeah.
Till you have a child and your child is showing you their pain and you want to help this child. So you realize that the source of this child's behavioral issues or challenges is within you. That's the only way that you actually want to break the pattern, because your children inspire you because you don't really love anyone as much as you love this child. I mean, I would hope the most wonderful thing is if you don't have a child and you are able to love yourself before you have a child. You're able to access this before you have a child. But the way a child triggers you really opens up that wound the way nothing else does.
So the child is also reflecting on you
Completely,
in a
your
way.
internal state. And you're not aware of your internal state. You don't, like, I wasn't. I was like, oh, I'm fine. I'm good. Like, here I am. I've left these toxic relationships. For me, what was toxic for me. And I've moved on, and I've, left these friendships that are not good for me. And I've got this great career, and I'm doing so well. I didn't realize till I had my child what a mess I was, internally. And I continue to find that pain living within me. It's never over, but you're able to access it, which is beautiful, and you're aware of everything through your child. To this day, after all the work I have done and what I've become conscious of, to this day, he wakes me up on a day-to-day, to moment, to second basis,
Selflessness is really celebrated in parenting, in conventional parenting.
Yeah.
But you have often written in your articles, columns about the importance of selfishness when you become a parent.
Yes.
I need you to elaborate on that idea.
Selflessness is the most misconstrued, misunderstood concept ever, because what is selfless? Let's just break it down. No self. Selfless. You don't have a self. You negate yourself. What is selfish? Being about the self. So why is it you are the source? You are the source of love. You are the source of nurture. You are the source of everything. So if you negate yourself, what will you have to give your child? And also, what are you modeling for your child? That to be in this world, to have a relationship, you have to negate yourself. You're basically giving yourself away for love, and you are the source of love. So unless you fill yourself up with love, you will have nothing to give, So, I mean, I think selflessness is actually very dangerous, because if you give away yourself, what will you have to give your child? And I've seen parents, mothers, fathers, actually men have better boundaries than women. In general. So I'm just going to say that, with women, I've seen women who give up everything, their careers, their life, their time, their friends, their themselves for the children, when actually your child needs you to be whole. And your children don't learn what you say. They learn what you do. They look at you and you're modeling to your child what they should be like. So if they see you giving away everything, they become people pleasers. They become people who are not connected with themselves, who don't have self-worth unless they're giving themselves away for love. You need to be whole within yourself and be okay. This is me. This is who I am. I need to take time out for myself because I matter. And when you do that, ironically, you become the most loving, giving, generous parent of all.
As you rightly mentioned, that women also have to bear the major brunt of parenting, right? A lot of working women seem to have a guilt about, spending so much time outside of their families, outside of, their homes, and doing what somebody who's a housewife would ordinarily do for her child.
Yeah.
And that guilt never goes away, right? I understand it's a product of conditioning, but how can we tackle it better?
It's so hard to work and to have a child because you don't have time for yourself. Because the misconception is that your time at work is time for yourself, but actually it's not. Because you're working and then you come home and you work. You work and then you work. So where is the time for yourself? So that is the part that becomes really difficult. And then you miss things about your child and you feel like you're prioritizing yourself over your child. And biologically, we're meant to be with our children. So the guilt comes from an evolutionary urge to be around your children. It's very hard. So I went through it. For the first 3 years of my child's life, I was working 14, 15 hours a day. And you know what it's like, with deadlines and so many nights I would be in the office till 2 o'clock in the morning. It's very hard, because you don't have any time for yourself. What advice would I give? I think the best advice I ever got about feeling guilt is to feel guilty. Just let yourself feel guilt, but don't react from the guilt. Feel the guilt. Understand why are you feeling guilty. So for me, I'll use myself as an example. Why are you feeling guilty? Because I haven't put my child to bed tonight. I'm not able to put my child to bed tonight. Why is that making you feel so bad? Because he doesn't feel his mother's love and he's just so unhappy, and like I'm neglecting him, I'm abandoning him, and for what? He's alone, and who's putting him to bed? A stranger, like a nanny, or if my husband is at work, or my husband, he doesn't feel the presence of his mother. And I'm like, well, when was the first time you felt that? Why are you feeling that way? Always go back to your childhood, and the reason why it affects me that much more is because my mother was not around to put me to bed. So that feeling of neglect and abandonment and the guilt over that is rooted in that pain, where I was alone in boarding school. She was not around. And so I don't want to do that for my child. So the pain is coming from there. So you go back to that moment. You sit with that pain and you feel that pain of when you did not have your mother put you to bed, when you felt abandoned, you felt neglected, And then you just say, I understand you. I love you. I'm here for you. I get it. You mirror back at yourself. Nobody put you to bed. You just empathize with yourself with presence. And you will be shocked at how much better you feel when you come back to the present moment. You still feel guilt, but then you become a little bit more regulated with the guilt. You're like, I feel horrible that I'm not with my child. I have to work right now. But it's not got that underpinning of deep pain. It's still there. Accept the guilt, feel the guilt, but you can't react from the guilt. You can't beat yourself up from the guilt,
Bad parenting can leave lifelong scars. Okay.
Yeah.
But in demanding absolute perfection from our children, are we scarring them for life?
That's such a good question. And one of the things I had a talk the other day, and one of the things I told all the parents is, you don't have to be perfect. Even if we do this 30% of the time, that's good enough. Winnicott, a famous psychologist, came up with the concept of the good enough mother, where you do this 30% of the time, where you apologize to your child, you become conscious of your pain, you become conscious of this, just 30% of the time. That goes a really long way. So perfection is not what we're after. We're just after, and being imperfect is so important. Repair is so important. So because a child cannot be under the misconception that relationships are perfect. When you mess up with your child, when you yell at your child, or you lose your temper with your child, and then you go back and you're like, I'm really sorry. Those were my big feelings. I had no right to speak to you that way. And you repair. That is really so powerful. That is more powerful than being perfect. Because your child learns that relationships are imperfect, but I should not put up with this stuff. And they learn how to be with their partners, with their friends, take ownership of their mistakes. And that's life, right? No relationship is perfect. No human being is perfect. But that doesn't mean that you should be treated badly. So perfection is not what we're after. We're after a human connected relationship,
You also speak of inner child healing. What is inner child healing?
Inner child healing is basically, so what is the inner child? So as human beings, we have a few key needs. We need to feel seen, feel heard, feel loved, and feel safe. So anytime any of these basic needs are not met, we're in pain. Like, we're not nurtured the way we need to be nurtured. So the parts of us that are not nurtured the way that we need is our inner child. It doesn't grow into adulthood. It's called, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. So it's a part of us that remains a child, that remains needy of being seen, of being loved, of being heard, of needing to feel safe. That is the inner child. So what is inner child healing? It is basically going back to those moments even if you don't remember it consciously, your body will remember. For example, for me with my throat, tuning into my throat, understanding the pain and releasing that pain, because that pain is trapped there. You know, inner child healing is seeing yourself, loving yourself, hearing yourself, and making yourself feel safe in the ways that you weren't. How do you do that? You go back to those memories, you tune into parts of your body, and you stay there and tolerate the pain with presence and love. That is inner child healing. It is like when your child has a tantrum or is having a particularly difficult emotional outburst, all you need to do is stay with your child calmly, regulatedly, and say, I love you, I'm here for you. I understand you. Mirror back to them what they're feeling. Do that for yourself, you know.
Yeah, and inner child healing is tough work.
It's the hardest work. It's agonizing. But you start realizing that at some point it is much harder to run from it than to stay in it, because your life starts falling apart. You know, your body is in pain. If you don't heal yourself, your body starts speaking when your mind doesn't. You start falling ill, your relationships start falling apart, your external life starts mirroring the pain of your internal life. You have to confront it at some point. Like Dr. Shefali says it really well. She said, you will wake up. You will wake up in this lifetime. Now, it is your choice whether you wake up at 40, because 40 is the beginning of waking up, really waking up at 40, at 50, at 60, or on your deathbed. You know, but you will wake up. There will be that glimpse like, oh my God. So at some point, it gets harder to run than to stay. So what is hard? Life is hard. Life is beautiful. Let's accept it. You know, life is not meant to be, but it's about the right kind of hard. Choose your hard. So this inner child healing is hard, but it liberates you. It connects you to yourself, you know. Life is hard anyway. It'll be hard to avoid it. Your external life starts mirroring it. You start falling sick. You start having toxic relationships. Your work is not satisfactory. You feel like every day you wake up and you don't have meaning and purpose in your life because you're not connected to yourself. So choose your hard.
And many of us do not even acknowledge that there is an inner child that needs to be healed, right? Because it requires enormous self-awareness. How do we reach that point of self-awareness?
You know, I've just put together a course which I'm going to release soon called How to Prepare Yourself Before You Have a Baby. You know, what is it? Because it's your child triggers you so much that's when you realize there's something wrong with me, you know, or you start acknowledging that there's something really wrong here and I need to do something about it, you know. How do you really get there before that? It's through a lot of awareness. It's through asking the right questions. So if you don't have a child, look at your life right now. What is triggering you? What triggers you in your life right now? You know, that trigger is like starts the roadmap of going within to see where the pain lies. So what could trigger you right now? Look at your relationships. Look at your relationship with maybe your friends or your husband or your partner or anything in your life that really triggers you right now, you know, and that relationship will give you the starting point of understanding what is wrong within or what needs help within. So, for example, if you are in a bad marriage, okay, let's just use a marriage as an example. If you're in a bad marriage and your husband or wife speaks to you in a certain way and you take that abuse, and you don't know why you're taking that abuse. And then you ask yourself, why am I taking this abuse? Why have I chosen this person to be with? And then you start understanding in what ways is this person similar to my parents or a childhood experience, you know? And then you go back to those experiences in your childhood and you feel that pain with your therapist. You know, you feel that, or your coach or your counselor, you feel that pain. They will help you navigate it and you understand and you release the roots of that pain. And then you come back to the present. So that is the beginning.
You know, parenting is also a role where you can't help but second guess yourself all the time, right? But much later in life, when we go out into the world, when is it possible to also see your parents as adults who will fail because they are human? Because children also do not give parents the agency to fail,
Yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's such a poignant point. I'm talking for our culture as Indians, and I know the Arabs are very much like that. We find it really hard to say anything about our parents or to even acknowledge that there's anything wrong in the relationship. We've been conditioned to just be extremely respectful of them. Perfection is not what we're after here, but the important thing is to acknowledge that two things are true. Our parents loved us and did the best that they could. It's not their fault, because the mistakes they have made is because their parents made the mistake. Their grandparents made the mistake. Their great-grandparents. So you can go down till the end of time. Your parents were treated by your grandparents a certain way because your grandparents were raised a certain way by your great-grandparents. Your great-grandparents suffered that way because their great-great-grandparents were like that. So it's generational trauma. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. Your parents are doing the best that they can with the emotional and physical resources that they have. But that doesn't mean you don't feel the pain of that. And when you feel the pain of that, you're able to also understand empathy and compassion for them truly, as opposed to being forced into it. Like, you can't say anything bad about your parents, or we have to accept this about our parents. Or conversely, that, oh, my parents suck and they're awful. No, both ends of the spectrum are fallacious, because two things are true, right? Parents are doing the best that they can, always, with the emotional and physical resources they have been given, and your pain is valid. Hold both of these in your hands as you navigate parenting. And I, a lot of the time, I have parents feeling so much shame for the mistakes they have made. And shame is not at all the answer, because shame is making yourself feel bad about yourself. It's compassion. Understand yourself. Why did I yell at my child? What is it that I need that I'm not giving myself, so I can be there for my child, and go with it and be vulnerable with yourself and give yourself love and understand yourself. Because shaming yourself makes yourself feel worse, which is going to lead you down a spiral that is very hard to come out of. Understand yourself. Ask yourself, why did I yell? What am I missing? Where am I needing the love? So shaming yourself will actually make this much harder. It makes your inner child feel like you really are awful, which deepens the pain, as opposed to saying, you're a good child. It's like, if your child is yelling at you, you're a good child having big feelings. Let me be with you and understand, what is it that's hurting you, so I can help you through this.
We were discussing this in the newsroom the other day, and I just found it very interesting. Does becoming a parent change you also as a spouse or a partner? Actually, in many cases it does, because once you have a child, you become so obsessed in that role as a parent that you forget being other things. And how do people cope with that? Is that changing?
It's so important to have the right partner when you have a child. You change completely. Your dynamic changes completely. It becomes very much about the child, and you start resenting each other if the other person is not helping you in the way they need to help you with your child. So the dynamic, the respect, the love becomes contingent about how both of you show up for this child that you have. You forget each other for a long time, because your focus is the child. It's a biological imperative, and I think it's a acceptance that for the first couple of years, it's really tough. Just accept it. A child is an infant till the age of 3. They don't sleep completely till the age of 3. When they fall ill, it's really hard till the age of 3. That's when a child actually starts developing the consciousness that they are separate from you. So they are infants till the age of 3. It's a difficult time. So show grace to your partner. So, for example, if I've seen these unrealistic expectations of a woman looking a certain way right after she has a child, or running back to work and and putting on this face for the world, let's accept that it's really hard. Let's accept that this marriage or this relationship has changed and there are challenges, and we are feeling this way, and it is hard, and let's not put pressure on ourselves to show up in this relationship in a way that is not possible for the first 3 years, to be honest. And when you show yourself that kind of love and grace and acceptance and compassion, it evolves. Your relationship evolves into something else. You become partners with this child. You're raising a child together, so much changes. The romance goes out of the window.
That's
then
the toughest part.
Your version of romance changes. Your version of romance is, honey, let me take the child for a couple of hours so you can have a nap. Or, telling each other how amazing you are. Thank you for doing that. Or being grateful to each other, really showing each other grace, forgiving each other, understanding that, okay, my husband, went out on a boys' night out and left me alone with this child. And ask yourself, why am I not asking for the help? And then tell your husband, like, I understand you needed a boys' night out. This is a lot of responsibility on your shoulders as well. Men also go through such a shift, the responsibility, your wife suddenly not being your emotional companion, you're suddenly alone. Maybe you needed that boys' night out. I understand you needed that boys' night out. Enjoy it. This is what I need. So when you show your husband, okay, this is what you needed, I'm fully supportive of that. This is what I need, as opposed to getting angry with him, saying, you left me alone with the child and you're always leaving me alone. And then, you can say, okay, it was hard for me tonight, but you deserve your outlet as well. This is the outlet I need,
Also, parenting for different ages. In the UAE, people particularly suffer from something called emptiness syndrome. Slightly older parents, when your children leave the nest to, study abroad. And how can somebody cope with that better? Because that generation of people are also taught to revolve their lives so much around children.
Yes. So remember what I said about selflessness?
Yes.
It's time to sit with that discomfort. Ask yourself, when your child leaves, why am I feeling so alone? Why do I feel completely devoid of self? Because your entire identity has been about your child. And that's the beginning of your healing. That's a trigger. Your child is left, it's triggering this feeling of like emptiness within you. Sit with the emptiness. Understand the emptiness. Why am I feeling empty right now? Because my child is not here. I have nothing to. I love them so much. What am I going to do with my life? My entire life has been about this. I miss them so much. Why do you miss them so much? Because what do I do with my day? I wake up and I'm with my child, Why is your child's day the thing that defines your day? Because I've always thought about someone else. My life has been about taking care of other people. Where did you learn that? Well, my mother gave up everything to take care of me.
Yeah.
And I don't know any different. I've been conditioned this way. You understand the roots of that. And how did that make you feel? And how does it make you feel? How empty does it? So just by sitting and understanding yourself, you start becoming, your sense of self starts coming back. You don't have to do anything. Just by understanding the roots of your emptiness and sitting with that pain, your sense of self starts coming back. And you slowly build yourself up. And as you slowly sit with that pain without running away from it, and you understand yourself, you feel the pain of that being negated completely, maybe not allowed to have a career, maybe culturally. You were supposed to get married, have children, be a housewife, take care of your children, or vice versa, something like that. Sit with that pain. Sit with that conditioning. Feel it. Feel the unfairness of it. Feel the anger of it. And you start feeling a sense of self come back because you're understanding yourself. And then suddenly you'll find that you feel connected to yourself. And you don't need a child to give you meaning. You find meaning by being connected to yourself.
Now, language. language is really important when it comes to raising children. How do we change or alter our language when we are interacting with our children?
Well, give me an example. Should we give an example? Because sometimes it helps to have practical examples.
Yeah, for example, a child is not drinking milk,
Yes.
and you believe it's very important for the child to drink milk.
Okay, so let's take that example. If child is not eating properly.
Yeah.
Okay, your child is being a fussy eater.
Yeah.
Now, you're like, oh my God, my child needs to eat. Okay, because if my child doesn't eat, then my child will go hungry, my child will be cranky, and then I'll have to deal with that. Ultimately, that's the root of it. If they fed well and they sleep well, then my life gets easier. So what do parents say? Come on, you must eat. Come on, finish your plate. Oh, you have something left. Come on. And they make children sit there and eat and make mealtime a stressful event. Because your anxiety about what the child not eating means to your life takes over everything. And in parenting, you have no control. So you try to control everything that you can to make things better. So you feel like if they're fed, they're okay.
Yeah.
If they're fed, they're okay. So let me make sure they're okay. Because that's the way I know how to measure their okayness. And so you get frustrated and you're like, you need to eat right now. Come on. If you don't eat, the policeman will come. I've heard this so many times. If you don't finish your plate, the boogeyman will come. So you do it out of fearing, like scaring the child. Now we all are born knowing our bodies. A child knows when they're full. Children know when they're full. That doesn't mean that, so you just have to let your child listen to his or her body, okay, and not put pressure on it. So have pressure-free meal times. Sit there and ask yourself, what is this bringing up in me? And instead of trying to scare them, speak to them with compassion, with boundaries. So what I would say during mealtime, here's your food. No comments on what they're eating, what they're not eating, whether they eat all their pasta and all their vegetables. Don't say, good boy, you ate all your vegetables, or good girl. No comments, If they don't eat anything, no comments. Okay, mealtime is all done now. The next time we are going to eat is at snack time. Okay? And now what if your child doesn't eat? And they're temperamental and they have a meltdown. And it's because they're hungry. You're like, I told you should have eaten. This is what happens when you don't eat. And then you feed the child out of anger. Okay, because they didn't listen to you before. Or conversely, you're like, oh my God, poor baby, let me give you a snack right now. In that moment, you sit down and say, oh, you're so hungry. You're so hungry. You didn't eat properly. I understand. Snack time is at 2:00. Now, I know this sounds really cruel, but you can pretend that 2:00 is sooner than it's 2:00. But you've got to let them feel the natural consequences of their choices. And do it with love. Say, I understand. You didn't feel like eating then, but now you're hungry. And, snack time is a few minutes away. I understand. Snack time is coming. I'm here with you. They understand the natural consequences of their choices. You're treating them with love, with boundaries, with pressure-free eating. And they learn their lessons. They eat. They enjoy the food that they enjoy, and they won't enjoy what they don't enjoy. They'll eat till they're full. Sometimes they won't. But chances are when they understand the natural consequences of what happens, that they won't do that again. And it makes your life easier. Half our stuff comes from frustration and anger. But at the same time, we can't control ourselves. We have no boundaries. And we have no emotional regulation. We don't even have empathy for ourselves. What is this bringing up in ourselves? Sit with yourself. Understand where the tension is coming from for mealtime. Lay out clear, kind boundaries. And let your child have natural consequences to their behavior.
All this brings me to the last question. Is there such a thing as right parenting?
Yeah, there is. When you treat yourself with love, that's the right kind of parenting. When you treat yourself with love. I had, when I had my child, I gained a lot of weight. And I could not stop eating because I was so depressed. I kept on eating and eating and eating. And my first question to myself was, I need to stop eating. I need to lose this weight. I looked that way and I don't look that way anymore. Yeah. And I think the most beautiful piece of advice I ever received was, let yourself eat. Say, okay, darling, this is the way you've known comfort. Eat. Love. Speak with love to yourself. And the irony is, the moment I started letting myself eat with love and say, you want to eat chocolate cake today? Let's eat the chocolate cake. And the moment I started feeling love from myself, that's when I stopped really needing to eat, because I wasn't eating love. I'd felt the love without the food. Do you understand? So the right kind of parenting is love for yourself. Speak to yourself with love. Watch out for when you say should. Watch out for when you shame yourself. And always say sorry to yourself. People think I'm crazy because I think, thank God there's Bluetooth in cars right now, because I talk to myself all the time. I'm like, I love you. I'm sorry I spoke to you that way. Speak to yourself the way you'd like to speak to your child. That's the right kind of parenting.
Thank you so much, Kavita. It's
you.
amazing how we think that parents need to set an example for their children, but actually it's children who end up teaching a lot more to parents.
Absolutely. And I wish more people would just see it that way. Just because children don't have the ability to communicate and do things that we can, they are much wiser than us. They are emotionally so astute. They are all right brain. We're born into this world with our right brain, just feeling, emotion, intuition, connected to energy. So they show us things that we don't see. They are our gurus.
So remember, the right kind of parenting is one where you are kind to yourself. If you like this episode, share your thoughts on the comment section below. And remember, Katie Life Podcast is available on Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Apple. Also, tell us about the issues you would like us to discuss and deep dive into for the next episode. Till then, with show producer Phil Green and camera person Shihab, this is Anamika Chatterjee signing off.